What are your first steps in the screenwriting process?
I think the first steps when I begin to write is a lot of thinking about it. Like I'm not really good at just sitting down and starting to bang it out. And oftentimes I don't write an outline. It's not like I have to make an outline first and then write the script. So for me, usually it's a couple of ideas that just won't go away. And so if those ideas won't go away, then that means that there's something, hopefully there's something there. And I just let it percolate. And it has a sort of magnetic, if it's a good idea, and these are rare, because it's not like I've never been one of those guys that just is able to spin a good yarn and have a million stories I want to tell. But in the case of Search and Rescue, it was just a couple of ideas started to sort of bind together. And I think some of them were ideas that I had for other movies that didn't go anywhere. Like, in other words, it's now that I think about it, there were several different ideas and characters that I had been developing for other movies that didn't sustain themselves. They were good, but for some reason they didn't belong in whatever movie I was trying to make. And so it all started to kind of combine into this one film. But you know what? That's specific to this particular movie, and every writing process is different. If somebody comes to me and says, I need you to write Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus in 2 weeks, that's a different process. That's when you sit down and, figure out, okay, act one, this should happen, and this should, that's when I do that. So, work for hire, that has to be of a I think that's easier. A simpler genre is easier to do than this. But I really did have to think about it, and I really did have to draw from a lot of things that had been dormant, ideas that had been dormant that all coalesced to form this thing. That's how it started. Then of course I had to sit down and write every day. Like everybody else, you have to write it. You can think about it all day long, but you have to write it.
Did you have dedicated times to write?
I did. I finally, I kept talking about it, and my wife was finally like, you need to write this thing. You just need to do it. And certainly without Valerie's, insisting that I just, get down to it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I did. I just basically realized that if I got up at, 5 in the morning every day, that I would be in this kind of, a lot of writers talk about this kind of like haze, where you're not really judging, you're not in a critical mind, you're just sort of in a semi-dream state. That if I got up at 5 and wrote for till 9 or something like that, if I wrote for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, that I could bang out, without me judging myself, I would just knock out, 4 pages or 3 or 4 or 5 if it was a good day. And I just did that, over, however long it was, a month. I just every day, just knocked out a little bit. So at least, after, if you do the math, 5 pages a day times 20 days is what, 100 pages? So inside of a month, you can get a draft done. And then you go back and you're like, oh, this is shit and this doesn't work, and you actually are able to tackle it critically, but at least the hard part of just getting it out was accomplished if I was diligent and got up and just did it. And that's hard, it's like going to the gym or whatever. That takes, anybody will tell you that's, and some days you don't have anything. Sometimes you just sit there, and you're just like, I got one line. But I think, as all real writers will tell you, that's like what's necessary. The writer writes. You can't expect to just not do it and then have great stuff pour out. You have to go to the gym, So that's how it happened.
You said something earlier about you have a friend who's a real writer, and I was just wondering, how is that different? What is a real writer?
I think a real writer is someone who just writes all the time. Like, that's what they do. It's not even about physically making the movie. It's about writing. It's like they write one script and then they start working on the next script, or they write one novel and they're already outlining the next novel. And they're just what I consider dyed-in-the-wool writers that are not hyphenate, writer-directors or whatever. They're just writers. And I have real respect for that because, it's very myopic. It's like this is their skill, and it's a very difficult thing to be a good writer. So I have a lot of respect for that. I'm a writer. I don't think I'm a writer naturally. I'm a writer out of necessity. In other words, I became a writer because I couldn't expect screenplays to fall out of the sky for me to direct. So I became a writer so I could have some control over the films I wanted to make. But I feel like it was a longer process to become a pretty good writer, whereas being a director felt more natural to me. I just had a more natural instinct for it, whereas writing felt like work, you know. And writing still feels like work to a certain extent. It feels like you really, whereas when I'm making a film, even though it's hard, it never feels like work. It just feels like, you know, natural for some reason. So I feel like the writers that are real writers are the ones that they speak that language, they hear that music. That's their primary way of expressing themselves.